I'm excited to welcome my friend Eric Barlow to this week's Moxie Live It podcast. Welcome, Eric, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So, Eric, I mean, we've known each other, I think, for several years now, meeting in San Diego. It's kind of funny that we both kind of moved to Utah.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
Well, I was just following you. I just thought
yeah, that was a great surprise.
It was the first investment advice, I think, in fleeing the state of California.
That would be the first I would have given you.
Yeah.
Certainly a big reason why I left.
Great. So, Eric, you're a serial entrepreneur, at least so I can tell, and of course, I think your flagship company is at Andina Family Offices.
That's correct.
Yeah. And I'd like to start off by just letting the audience get to know you a little bit. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, your wife, your children.
Yeah, I'm originally from Utah. Grew up in Holiday, Utah. I'm a Mighty Titan, Olympus High over there. My wife also grew up in the very same area that I did, but we didn't know each other. She was 3 years behind me. So as I went into junior high, she was coming in as I left, and same thing with high school. So we never met, even though we're even in the same ward, same church group when we were young. But we're far enough apart in age, we just didn't know each other. So
she's a Titan also?
She's a Titan, yeah.
All right. What's the name of the middle school?
Olympus.
And she's an Olympus?
She's an Olympus Junior High, or whatever we want to call them. Bulldog.
Yeah.
So we actually met at the University of Utah, and I was studying finance, and she was originally in ballet and then switched over to communications. And so she ended up finishing up with a communications degree, and I actually was in accounting and was almost done, and just absolutely, I put myself through school doing accounting and absolutely did not like it, knew it was not my personality. And so I switched to finance and finished up in finance. But nowadays, I think I'd probably at least have a minor in accounting. They didn't give those back then, and I probably wasn't that far from a double major, honestly. So I ended up doing that. And then we got married.
Sorry to interrupt, but your wife's Julie?
Yeah, Julie.
So what did she end up getting her degree in?
Communications.
Communications,
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Communications, no. So we ended up getting married just about the last quarter of school or half year of school at Utah, and then we ended up having 3 daughters, Carly, London, and Ariana. And now we have a beautiful little grandson, which I just can't get enough of. I'm having so much fun with him, it's unbelievable. And that was another reason to get back up here to Utah, was to be near him.
That's even better than the tax break.
That's much better than the tax break.
Yeah. So, I mean, ever since I've known you, you've always been in a really good physical shape. So every time I come, give you a hug, slap in the back, I'm like, wow, someone's been in the weight room a lot. And so that stems back from, did I understand you played a little bit of college football?
Yeah, a little bit. I actually started playing football when I was 8, but the crazy thing with me is I had one of those little cement weight sets. You remember those?
Yeah.
When I was in 5th grade. I was a big kid. I got my growth. People have a hard time believing this, but I was 200 pounds in 9th grade.
Wow.
So I got my growth really early, but I really started lifting pretty consistently starting in about 5th or 6th grade. And
haven't stopped.
So, yeah, I took a little break during COVID. I'm trying to get back. And at our age, we can't afford to miss, we got to keep it going. But so I've always loved working out and trying to stay fit, and it's a fight, as always.
Yeah. So we'll just jump to career then, and Andina Family Offices, and maybe tell us a little bit about it, what you do.
Yeah, so when I first was graduating from college, I was super entrepreneurial and not wanting to go to work for somebody. And so there was a couple of careers that didn't require a lot of capital because I had none, my family had none, I had no money anywhere. I mean, literally there were some quarters I was in school thinking, how am I going to pay for this? And I would just find a way by working and putting in extra hours, whatever it took. But when I was finishing up school, I was actually got approached by a couple of different people just that I'd met saying, hey, there's a couple of financial firms hiring and I think you could be really good at it. I didn't know anything about it, so I actually went and interviewed with some more insurance-driven firms. One was Mass Mutual, one was Money, one was New York Life. And I went and met with them, and they told me that you could have an unlimited income. without any upstart capital costs. I thought, well, that sounds about right for where I'm headed. And so I didn't love the idea of selling insurance. I never did from the beginning. And so I kept looking, and I found a firm that was fee-based. The only one at that time really in Utah, and probably the largest in the Intermountain West, because fee-based financial consulting was really just coming onto the forefront of the business. Everybody else was really, you had stockbrokers selling commissions on stocks, you had insurance guys pushing insurance, and then very few were doing comprehensive financial planning, but I was really drawn to it. I knew it'd be a lot harder because you have to know a lot more. You have to know things about taxes, you have to know things about estate planning, you have to know things about asset protection, you have to know things about all kinds of different investments, not just stocks, bonds, and insurance. And so it was the beginning of when I started at that firm. It was a big learning curve, but they had a mentor program, so I came in under a mentor, and we just split cases. I was out literally. I mean, you have people doing what you're doing, selling pest control.
Yeah.
I was actually walking into businesses like yours here. I mean, I couldn't get in your front door, obviously, because you've got a lock and key on it. But I actually was walking into businesses and introducing myself to the business owners. I'd ask them, and I actually picked up clients doing this. I'd have them come in and meet with my mentor, and that's kind of how I started in the business.
So you've got some cold calling experience yourself.
Oh, I did tons of cold calling when I started the business. It was brutal, and it was hard, and I was working just horrible hours, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. I was in on the weekends, and one thing I was told by two of the insurance companies I was interviewing with is only 3% of people who start in the career make it past 5 years. I was told it by two separate ones. I remember I went home after hearing that the first time, and I looked at Julie, and I said, you know what they told me today? Only 3% make it past year 5 in this business. It's that hard.
It's 97%
are failing. Yeah. But I remember I looked at her and I said, I have a 100% chance. And that was my attitude going in, that nothing was going to deter me from succeeding. And really pinned my ears back and just put in a lot of time and effort to build my initial practice. And then along the way, we made a money management agreement with Alta Capital Management, which is now the second largest money manager in Utah.
Wow.
At the time that I joined them, they were a little just over $100 million firm. They brought me on to direct and be part of the investment committee and also direct marketing. And over the next 5 years, some pretty tough markets. I mean, we had 2000 to 2003, which was a 50% down market. We grew it to $700 something million, and I had my first exit. I sold 50% of my interest in that, and then went out and started doing some investment banking and some other things. Yeah. So anyway, that leads. It's a long story to get to starting Andina Family Offices.
But that's the story.
That's the story. So that's my backdrop. And along the way, I met a fantastic person, Brett Belliston, one of my best friends and my business partner. And he and I become very close, traveled together. And so when I started thinking about, Utah really didn't have, that I could see, a full service multifamily office, meaning offering services beyond just really stocks and bonds and basic financial planning. So having access to unique real estate deals, unique private equity deals, and utilizing private credit more thoroughly, and just some of these things I knew that was needed for my own portfolio, and then also for high net worth clients that were exiting or they're just having tremendous cash flow from their businesses, and they really need to start getting diversified. And stocks and bonds is just it's such a small sliver of what's available out there. So I wanted to build a firm that gave full access to much more variety of investment options.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, like you said, when people have an exit, if they were building widgets, then they know how to build widgets really well. It doesn't make them experts on investments or on the real estate portfolio or on stocks and bonds even. Or as you said, if people are running a business that's spinning off a lot of cash flow, they should be spending their time, I think, on their business and what they know how to do.
Yeah, I mean, you made a great comment to me the other day about reinvesting money back for making a decision to buy or not buy a building. That's a great scenario for most business owners, is cash is king, and utilizing that cash flow in your most explosive asset. There's nowhere to go invest money to duplicate the returns you're going to get in your active business if it's a great business. And so at some point, though, a lot of businesses reach a point where they just aren't going to expand a lot more, and they have free cash flow. Now they want to start diversifying risk away from a single asset. And so there's a lot of reasons. And then, of course, once they exit, they get $100-200 million. And now they've got, a lot of issues that they've got to deal with. Not only what do we do with this money, but how do we keep our family normal, and how do we teach grandkids and our kids how important this money is to do good in the world and to pass on a legacy of that you could be proud of. And a lot of families get this really wrong, and they end up with a bunch of entitled kids and with a situation that, can you imagine dying and looking down from heaven and watching your kids fighting over money? You would give it all away to avoid that in a heartbeat. So we help families kind of walk and get around those types of minefields. We do family retreats and help them get mission statements. I mean, it's very broad.
Wow, that's pretty involved.
It's very involved. Yeah.
Wow, so that's like, that helps me understand your mission. You literally help families of high net worth families have family retreats and put together a plan and
that's correct.
Kind of develop a family culture, so to speak, how they're managing this wealth.
Yeah, and to teach the future generations what is the importance of this wealth for us as a family, and how are we going to make a difference in the world. And then, through...
What's the responsibility of our stewardship?
It's all about stewardship, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we have, then you get the grandkids, and then the grandparents can be such an amazing influence on grandkids and teaching them the principles of stewardship and what that means. And you do that through experiential giving. It's one thing just to give money away. It's another thing to go be part of the experience of giving that money away. So we get a lot into those things also, and teaching families how to do that and how to have those kids be a part of that, and those grandkids be part of that experience.
Eric, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing. I have to say, in our business, one thing that's unique is just how close we become with our clients. And that's one of the unique things. Not too long ago, I'll just share this quick story. We had a client that he and his brother had a business together, and we had done all the advanced planning for him, got all the buy-sell agreements in place, got some very large insurance policies in place for buy-sells. And they're both big guys, but they got really good ratings on these policies. And we don't do a lot of insurance, but when we do, it's usually large, and it's usually for very specific things like this. But we get a call one day. I was in a meeting with my partner Brett, and they said, "Hey, this client's on the phone. His brother's died." And so we walk in the other room. And by the way, after calling, because he had a heart attack, after calling family, Brett was the first call that these people made.
Wow.
That this brother made. And I was standing next to Brett, and he was just firing questions one after another. Brett, what about this? And all I heard Brett saying is, "It's taken care of. It's taken care of. It's taken care of. It's taken care of." And when he hung up, I looked at Brett and I said, "That's why we do what we do." Yeah, that's why we do what we do.
Wow.
So, and we had tears in our eyes because we loved his brother, first of all, and we were in shock about his death. But really to know that family is on such a good path, and that the surviving spouse was going to be well taken care of, and that all the agreements were in place, that there would be no infighting or debating about values of the business. All of it was done.
Sounds like you get heavily involved even into legacy trusts and that type of work.
Yep, we do a lot of that, and we do a lot of very advanced planning in businesses and helping them make sure they own things right. Do a lot of deep tax planning for estate and for income tax, because estate taxes primarily are voluntary. If you structure things right early enough, things won't be in your estate. And so we try to get clients earlier, while they're still growing the business, so that we can really get in and make a big difference to them.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. So I hear you talking about a lot of other businesses, though, and maybe you can share what some of those are and what the relationship is with Andina.
Yeah, so when Brett and I were growing and progressing the firm forward, we knew that we needed to have a great private equity solution. We knew we had to have a great private real estate solution, along with some other alternative assets like hedge funds and other things that most firms just aren't good at. In fact, very few are. And so we built out partnerships with really smart people. We brought in a partner on the private equity side, Gary Post came in. He ran Roy Disney's private equity for a while. He's an ex-McKinsey guy, and he just has a lifetime of experience in private equity, and he's super careful. And so I hope I'm not misquoting this, but I think since 2014 we've had one write-off in our private equity.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was small.
Wow.
It was a small investment. We have some that are doing great, but we have a lot that have just knocked it clean out of the cover off the ball. And Gary is just smart, and we pass on most things. And then the private real estate is where our clients have just made an enormous amount of wealth. Is in the private real estate, and we've done everything from senior housing to industrial to light industrial to we're really focused on multifamily right now throughout the country. We have a large project in Tampa. We've done big projects in Nashville, Charlotte, Raleigh, Salt Lake City. So we're really interested in that asset class right now because we feel like it's the best protected, that and probably industrial, the two best protected asset classes, meaning most conservative.
So your clients are able to participate how they want in these different asset classes.
That's correct.
Right?
That's exactly right.
And then you have expert partners that you built out so that you are able to offer your clients expertise in these different assets.
Yeah, and if you think about this becomes really important because someone sells a business for $50 million. All of a sudden, everybody and their dog is hitting them up with an investment idea and a concept. And most smaller people trying to run family office, they really say you should have about $250 million to run your own family office if you're going to do it. But some people just have interest in being involved, which is great. But the challenge that you really have is due diligence, and how do you get world-class due diligence done on your investments? Because if you're not doing that, that's where mistakes are going to be made and you're going to lose money. So what we offer to our clients is we say to them, look, when you get something put in front of you, bring it to us. We'll co-invest with you. So we'll start due diligence for free. And if we'll just keep whittling it down as long as we like it. But if we hit from 10,000 feet down to 5 and we find something or a few things we don't like and we're out, we'll let you know at that point that we're out. And then if you want us to continue, if it's your brother-in-law and you really need to make an investment and you want due diligence done, then you'll pay us for that, for our time from then on out. So, but really they're out nothing on the due diligence. That's the same with real estate. It's the same with private credit. It's the same with a lot of these asset classes that people are going to get hit up a lot about and shown a lot of deals. So a big part of us creating these other businesses and bringing in really smart partners was to really provide that due diligence, which is so critical for our clients. And occasionally they bring us a deal that's really interesting, and we do all the due diligence. Then we just co-invest with it because we have a lot of money to invest, both in private real estate and private equity. So,
how much, if you're able to say, how much do you have under management now?
Well, that's a hard number to quantify because we don't mark up our real estate things and stuff until there's events, but somewhere around $1 billion.
Yeah.
Plus, and if we really did full markups, if we did full markups on things, it would be, and a lot of that is in some of these alternative assets. But for instance, when you're not marking up private equity, we have some that are 10x that we're not marking up significantly on reports.
Yeah.
Because we're conservative on this stuff, on how we're reporting. Same with real estate. I mean, real estate, unless you have a refinance or you're selling it, it's not like we're going to Zillow
right.
and pulling out values on Zillow. We need something to really justify marking up those assets, and so it's significant.
So I remember sitting in your living room a few years back, and you were telling me, "Gosh, you should get in this one asset class," which I did not get into, and you were buying real estate up around the Salt Lake City airport. Yeah. What did I miss out on there?
Well, that one, I don't want to have you cry.
Okay, I'm just asking.
That one's been pretty phenomenal. We have really good partners that are running that project in the Northwest Quadrant, but we built.
I missed out on another retirement, didn't I?
Yeah, I mean we have 1,500 acres, and then we have an agreement with Rio Tinto on the rest of the property. So we have 3,000 acres that we have to work with, and we'll probably build, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 60 industrial buildings. And the first one we finished, Amazon took, and then we turned around and
Leasing it from you?
leased it from us, and then
Yeah.
we turned around and sold that one.
Wow.
Returned all capital on the first building,
Mm.
and so
Oh, wait, you return all capital for the whole investment
for the whole
on
investment,
out of the 60 buildings that you were going to do on
just on the property, just
yeah,
on the land,
with just the first building.
first building. Yeah, and now we've just finished about, I think, and these are rough numbers, 180,000 square foot building, another 250,000 square foot, and then a 1.2 million square foot. And the Amazon building was about 600,000-ish.
So you're able to build all those other massive, huge buildings with the capital from selling the one? Or?
Yes,
Close.
and the other great thing that we had is we bought the land really well, and therefore we have a really low land basis.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't think I should be telling the numbers on it
Yeah,
because I might get in trouble. But
No, don't.
it's way more than a 10x.
Yeah.
Way more.
Well,
Yeah, just on the land. So when you go to finance, of course, now you have this land that was worth this, it's now worth this, and now we have the capital we put in. I think that we may have most of the project financed now just from that first building.
yeah.
So I don't know that we'll be calling any other capital, at least we're not expecting to right
Yeah,
now.
you've hit a lot of home runs. So.
Yeah, that one's special. This one in Tampa we're working on right now is another one that's just, we're just really great. And let me tell you that the reason we have those kind of opportunities is because people know that if we say we're going to show up with the capital, we're going to show up when we say we will show up with it. And therefore we have really good relationships out in the marketplace, and people are coming to us with these projects. And so we're on the general partnership side of these developments. And at least all the ones we're doing now, or most all of them, we're on the general partnership side versus the limited partnership side. Because we're side by side with the developers,
Yeah.
and we have some really good national partners that have done 25,000 to 30,000 doors, type of partners. And so we've really de-risked the asset in what we're doing a lot. And a big reason that we're developing right now is just because it's so hard to buy existing. It'll be interesting talking to this young group today, because I know a lot of them are wanting to buy real estate, and real estate is so expensive right now that people buying now are not necessarily buying just to make a great return, because the market cannot sustain what it's doing.
Right.
We saw that in Vegas, and now we had some unique events that happened in 08 and 07, but it just can't sustain 8 to 12% long-term growth rate. So we're going to have an adjustment.
So not necessarily just real estate, but where do you think there's opportunities in the market in the next 12 to 24 months?
I think that's really hard right now. You have a frothy stock market. The valuations are 20%, 25% above norms, averages. Bond market's not paying anything. There's not a lot of incentive to do that. If you asked me that maybe a year and a year ago, I could have said maybe energy, but energy is totally recovered.
Yeah.
So right now, I feel like you can still find some decent opportunities in private equity if you're doing it right, and you can find some opportunities in private real estate if you're willing to develop. Otherwise, you could maybe get lucky and find a property out there that's priced, because you make your money in real estate on the purchase, right? So you might get lucky and find something, but it's just really hard market. So, another way to ask that question would be, Eric, what in the market's on sale?
Yeah, let's do that.
Nothing.
Nothing's on sale.
Yeah, nothing's on sale.
Yeah. Well, that's a good answer.
So, and to all these young people that are just starting to make money and invest money, all they've known is good.
We're going to learn some lessons, aren't they?
There's going to be some lessons. Yeah. There's just no way it can sustain what it's done, and there's no way we're not going to experience some downturns. It's part of the whole experience. So the other thing we have that's a challenge in today's market is the internet makes people feel really smart and educated, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, there's a large part of that's true. I mean, if you're willing to put in the time and the effort, you can become pretty smart and you can make pretty good decisions, but there's really nothing that replaces experience. Going through some hard times, going through some hard markets, knowing how to navigate those things. that end up being the greatest life lessons. I mean, I had one project, and I'm not going to go into detail about it, that kicked me in the teeth back in '07 after I'd sold my shares out. It kicked me in the teeth. I learned more from that experience than everything else put together on what not to do and how to be a lot smarter. And so when you hear, I'm sure you hear a lot of your guests say that kind of comment all the time. It's a lot of times the hardest things that you come out the backside better.
We all seem to agree, myself included, that some of the greatest lessons that we've learned are from our failures.
Yeah.
And when things don't go right, it's just a great teacher.
It's a great teacher.
So can you think of any other times you've been taught in the School of Hard Knocks? Lessons, at least that...
Yeah. I sure I can. I mean, when I was younger, I didn't have a great mentor in my life. I didn't have a great male mentor in my life at all. My stepdad was an alcoholic. He was drunk most nights a week. He's a wonderful man. I mean, he married my mom after she got divorced when I was 5 or 6. And, you know, my mom had 5 kids on the age of 12. I mean, an amazing guy that he's willing to do that. But it's not like he was a great mentor for me in everything. Now, he was an entrepreneur and worked hard and taught some good lessons that way. So, you know, one of the things that I look back on, a hard lesson, was that I felt like I'd have an answer for everything. I got defensive, you know, and so maybe that's a personality thing at times for people. Maybe it was for me, and maybe still is. I don't know. That's just something you have to work on, is taking responsibility. Which, when I've coached football, because I've coached a number of years, Little League football, it's the number one thing because the kids aren't being taught that at home, and for the most part. I'm teaching them, you take responsibility, period. I don't want to hear excuses, period. Because I know the mistake I made, and I didn't want to make those same mistakes, you know. Because they're, you know, just do better. Say yes, sir, and do better. So I think that was a great lesson.
You've also, I mean, on the flip side of that, you took your first job and you shared with us that it was like a 3% success rate, 97% failure rate. You're obviously in the 3%. And so maybe what's something you've learned from the school of, maybe something that you can tell that you did that maybe that the other 97% did not?
I think this part is really important, and that is, especially to young people, figure out your strengths early on. So I actually sent my 2 youngest daughters, London and Ari. Carly had already figured out she was going to be teaching music and doing music, and the other 2, I actually took them to to get tested for aptitude, to find out where their great strengths are. And there's a lot of tests you can take. There's Strength Finder, and there's many others that you can kind of go in and figure out your strengths. But I think one advantage I had, and one thing that made a difference to me, was that I knew my strengths, and my strength was people, and being able to build relationships of trust. And I knew that if I could get with people, because it's nothing fake, it's a sincere, I like them and I care about them thing, that I could succeed. And I think that was a big part of why, you know, I made it past that 3%, you know, into that 3%. It's because I knew that as long as I was willing to work hard and meet with people, that I could develop relationships of trust and help them make great decisions for their financial futures, and that I could, you know, educate them, because I've always looked at my role as an advisor, to educate and to show options and to give options, and then tell people what I think is the best option, but make sure they understand the next 2 best things. And so I feel like the other thing is the ability to teach. So I love people, and I think another strength would be teaching.
Yeah. What changes do you see going on in the industry over the next 5 to 10 years?
You know, it's very interesting right now, because the markets have been so good. There's been a real flee to passive investing through indexes, and and that's more taking the shotgun approach to investing, right?
Yeah.
Where you're just blasting out, and you're owning the whole S&P or the whole NASDAQ or whatever you may be owning. I'm not sure that trend's going to change a lot, And the reason being is you have all this money that's been going into 401k plans and other plans that have been driving this market that that it's going to continue to drive those things. Now, I hesitate a little bit because I'm kind of looking at demographics a little bit of our country, and we do have some interesting things about to hit us. I mean, we're kind of in a little lull with the baby boomers and needing to go and rest homes and other things.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see baby boomers retiring in droves. And as a result of that, you're going to have a net, not outflow because they don't pull it all out at once, but a shifting of portfolios to a more income-based portfolio because now they need to be sustained by that portfolio.
They need their annuity.
Yeah, and the great thing we have in this country is we're going to go through maybe a few hard years, maybe through the late 2020s, 25 to 30. It's potentially could be pretty tough because we have many of those people making that shift. But it's double whammy because they're also not working, putting the money in.
Yeah.
So it's a double whammy of what we have facing us. But what we do have in this country that most countries in the world do not have right now is we have the millennials coming up, and they're a massive group that start really hitting their stride in about 2030. Let's hope that they can keep our country together to get us through all that.
Oh, they're going to do it.
We have faith in them. It's going to be up to them to do it. It really is. But my point is that you look at Europe, or you look at Japan, you look at China. Where's their up and coming generations?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
They're a great book, Absolute Superpower. I think everybody ought to read it. But anyway, so
what's your view on Bitcoins? Is that something we should be looking at buying now? What do you think? How do you think it plays out over the next decade?
Bitcoin's a tough one. Yes, it's here to stay. Will it become a currency? Right now, I'm doubtul, just because you can't have the kind of fluctuations you have, and it has to have a better store of value. Until we see a better store of value, it's very difficult for it to be talked about as a replacement, because you don't want to take a Bitcoin and then the next day have it drop 15-20%. What's going to happen right now? So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. We actually do have a pretty large exposure to not Bitcoin, but to XRP through Ripple. We're actually Ripple on our private equity side. We ended up getting on their cap table. And so we ended up, when we really didn't do it for the crypto, by the way. We did it because they have very disruptive technology for wire transfers. The old SWIFT system is very ancient, and they have a very legitimate way to solve the wire transfer errors, because it can be as high as 12% in third world countries if you're sending money. It's even high here in the US.
Wow.
So, but they basically move it to zero through using XRP through this. So we ended up with a big exposure to it, not knowing it. We were really invested in Ripple because of their technology, but it's not going anywhere, obviously, and it does have a finite number that will be issued. And I've read 3 books on it, and it's still not really clear in a lot of ways, honestly.
Yeah, how that blockchain works, most of it.
Yeah, I mean, but I can see how it's really important in a lot of industries, and how it's definitely going to be disruptive and here to stay. I think one of the challenges we have is just the way people are investing in it. And what I mean by that is, if you're looking at building a financial house, okay, Bitcoin's going to be the top of the roof of when you get around to investing in it.
Okay.
A lot of people are skipping the foundation, and they're skipping the framing, they're skipping all that, and jumping right in because it's the hot asset class. And hopefully they'll do great, and it works out great, but there is a lot of other parts of their financial world that they need to make sure get put in order.
That's a great analogy. So you mentioned a few books. So if a lot of our listeners are college students or recent graduates, and what books do you recommend for them?
Okay, so for you, I actually sat down yesterday and started making a list, and I think I was up to like 70.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big list. But let me tell you a few I would start with, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit tonight.
Good.
But there's three I try to read every year outside of my religious readings, right? One is As a Man Thinketh. You've read all, I think you'll probably read all three of these. For sure, Think and Grow Rich. Mm-hmm. And then The Four Agreements. Mm-hmm. Those are the three books I try to read myself. And Think and Grow Rich is a little bigger read, so sometimes I'll just do the summary of that one through program, that Blink List or whatever that is that I use. But I enjoy actually reading, and I actually listen to a lot of books. I would guess that I read or listen to somewhere between 1 and 6 books a month.
Wow. Any others that are recent, or again, these are really targeting the kids who are graduating or in college and just they're interested in your career, following your footsteps. Okay, so there's a couple of different answers to that. It kind of depends what it means they're interested in my career, because there's different paths, right? So if they're talk about that.
If they're analytical and they're thinking they want to be on the portfolio management side of the business, there's books like The Intelligent Investor. I'd recommend all of Buffett's books for either one. I'm a very fundamental, bottoms up kind of thinking, investor, and that comes part from my Alta days and just how I personally like to invest is buying companies for the right reason at the right price, knowing that they have a good solid foundation.
Strong fundamentals that you can understand.
That you can understand, you can get your head around.
Good strategy, good management, good industry.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of good business books, Good to Great, Great by Choice. There's a number of good business books that you can also read that are good for the industry. I haven't read this book, but I understand Anthony Robbins' book is a good basic book. I mean, he's really just trying to bring in clients for their money management firm in his book, which most of them are. But I guess it's a pretty good basic book. I haven't read it just because I think it's maybe a little elementary, but it would be really good for someone just wanting to learn some things about the industry and kind of how the industry is working.
Any other recommendations for what some of these young women and young men should do to embark in a career? And I know that's a broad question, but...
Well, I'll just reiterate one thing I've said, and that is figure out your strengths. Okay. Know where your strengths are, because you're going to be so much happier when you are in a position to work within the power of strength versus, I mean, you and I think you were very much the same cloth in this. Is, I focus on my strengths, I hire out my weaknesses. and so you have to figure out a business, first of all, that your strengths fit well with in the main money-making activities of that business. So, because a lot of businesses have a lot of different parts of it, but there's certain parts of businesses that have to be focused on relentlessly to be successful. And if you're going to be a business owner and drive a business, make sure your strengths line up with those main money-making activities.
I think that is very, very good advice.
Yeah.
Instead of part of the business that's just ancillary to it, because then they're less valuable, maybe more replaceable, or lower cost of replacing you.
That's right. And by the way, if you become great at the main money-making parts of your business, you're valuable in every business in your industry.
Yep.
And so even if things don't go well, you're extremely employable, regardless.
And it's also easier to become the entrepreneur in your industry.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I'm a big advocate of focusing on strengths and finding, and it doesn't mean follow your passion. I think those are two different things. I think a lot of times people say, "Oh, follow your passion." I'm like, well, as long as your passion can make you some money and provide the life you want and provide the dreams that you want, then that's probably good advice. But otherwise, make it your hobby and find a way to make money with your strengths. There's different ways you kind of have to think about that. And so I'm much more a believer in follow your strengths, develop your strengths, hire out your weaknesses, build teams around you that complement each other. And we do this within our business. I mean, we have a strength finder for every person we ever hire and look and see how they're going to fit in, if they're the right fit for the position. Because some of those tests are pretty hard to fool. I mean, you can try, but they're hard to fool. And so that would be the main thing. The other thing I would say to them, though, is develop a love for learning. And that doesn't mean just within that industry. Develop a love for learning great principles of life and how to have a great life outside of just work. I mean, work is one part of it, but how do you develop, and maintain and keep great relationships, and how do you serve people? How do you make a difference through service? Because that's a big deal. I mean, people don't understand some of the laws in place around that, but learn how to serve and learn how to be grateful. One thing I'll be talking about tonight just a little bit is just gratitude, and taking the time to tell people you love them and you care about them and you appreciate them, and start that young. And the more you can appreciate them, because you really have thought, feeling, and then gratitude, right? Everything starts with thought.
Glad you brought this up.
Huh?
I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you're going to talk about it tonight. It's pretty, I agree that I think this is fundamentally important for young people to develop as a habit. To just sit and stew in realizing whose shoulders they're standing on. As I've said before on this show, sometimes we're standing on people's faces.
Yes,
we don't have the courtesy to say thank you.
Yeah,
or
say
even
thank you.
Acknowledge that we're standing on their face.
Yeah. And just give people credit.
Yeah.
We all don't have to have the credit.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you were younger. I've always been a reader for many, many years. I wish I retained more of it better, but
right.
I love to read and I love to listen to books actually. So my car's a learning center. It's a hard in between for me because I love music too. I'm an audiophile guy, so I have a great stereo system in my house and I love to listen to music. So I'm kind of splitting that between my car listening to great music but turning it into a learning center. But my suggestion would be to young people is find some of the great literature that's out there, and whether that's self-improvement, whether it's some of the classics, whether it's great stories like Shoe Dog or Boys in the Boat, or other great stories where people have had to fight through great adversity. I mean, a lot of people don't know how basically for Nike was on the verge of bankruptcy,
right.
Literally for the first 15, 20 years of that business. And it's great to read that story and say, wow, this guy, found a way to fight through all that. And so I love reading great stories, and history is great to read.
I like that you've shared that I think is important. Is a lot of people want to know what are the 2 or 3 books that I should read, as if they're going to read them and then they're done because they read the 3 books they're going to get in there. What I'm hearing you say is cultivating the habit of learning, and that there's always going to be more great things that you can read. And we talked about how we thought the world was going to change and your industry is going to change.
Right.
Well, the way you're going to be staying current with that is by listening and reading and soaking in information.
Yeah.
Anyway, Eric Barlow, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
You are a good man and a very, very good friend, and that's one of the reasons
Likewise.
why I'm glad that you chose to take the time to meet with us here today, because I think you are a model example for people to follow, and I think you share with us a lot of words of wisdom. So,
well, thank you. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear you tonight.
You know how much I love and appreciate you and Kristen, for sure, and your family. So
the feeling's mutual.
yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks.